I did want to let y'all know, if you have been following me and enjoying some of the bit information that we have got, we have a new online course that's being released. It has only been available up till now in a masterclass version that is like 30 hours long. We are now going to release the original 6 modules of that course, which does include the bit video, but a lot of add-ons as well as a 70-page study guide that goes along with the course. We have also included in this self-guided course 2 of the videos from the master class where we had some special guests coming in. So that's something like an extra 4 to 5 hours worth of content for you to watch that I think adds a lot of value to the course and gives you an idea of what the master class would be like if you decided to upgrade to it at a later time. You also, because you've already bought the self-guided part of the course, you won't have to pay full freight for the master class version if you decide to go to it later. If you're interested in checking that out, head over to thebitcourse.com. We will have a link in the show notes to the specific page with the self-guided course if you're interested in more information. At the very least, I would encourage you to get on our subscriber list for the newsletter. I do send out pretty regular emails with some tips and things, and that's not stuff I share on social media. That's all exclusive to this particular newsletter. So anyway, check it out. I think it's well worth your time and money, and it does cover way more than just the dry bit mechanics and stuff you may think it has. It's got a whole lot in there about how to use your hands, how to apply this bit in practical terms versus that bit, kind of the differences between them, the things this is going to help you with versus that. So it isn't just mechanical kind of stuff. It's a lot of very practical information as well.
We've got a pretty cool guest today for the podcast, and a guy I was pleased to be a co-presenter with at Kansas Equifest that just wrapped up this past weekend. I can confirm he's an excellent dinner companion and an all-around good guy. Tik Maynard was born in Vancouver to Rick and Jennifer Maynard. Rick was an international 3-day eventer who later settled on Grand Prix show jumping. Jennifer is a Grand Prix dressage rider who is also a 4-star para dressage judge. Tik began his competitive career in Pony Club, achieving his A-level certification in 2002. He then began competing in Tetrathalon, which includes riding, running, shooting, and swimming. Tik was a part of the national champion Tetrathalon team in 1997 and a part of the Canadian team that won gold in Kentucky in 1998. He was also the Canadian national champion in 2000. Tik earned his Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of British Columbia in 2005. After Pony Club, Tik competed full-time in the sport of Modern Pentathlon, which includes running, swimming, shooting, fencing, and show jumping. Tik was on the Canadian national team and won national championships twice. He also competed at multiple World Cups, World Championships, and at the 2007 Pan Am Games in Rio. Tik is a 2-time freestyle winner, 2015 and 18 of the Thoroughbred Makeover, and has also judged the competition. Tik serves as an online instructor for the Horsemen's University and for the Noel Floyd Equestrian Masterclass. He's a regular guest on podcast and a contributor to the Practical Horseman, Noel Floyd, Chronicle of the Horse, Horseman's Journal, and others. Tik was also a columnist for Off the Track Thoroughbred magazine for 6 years. He's the author of In the Middle Are the Horsemen, published by Trafalgar Square Books in 2018. Tik is married to Sinead, a USA 3-day eventing Olympic team member and host of the popular podcast In Stride by Ride IQ. Together they have 2 children, ages 1 and 4. They regularly teach eventing and horsemanship clinics together as well. Since 2008, Tik has been training horses full-time. After spending 3 years as a working student, he became assistant trainer to Ann Krasinski and then the head trainer at Bow Brick Hill Stables in New Jersey. After Tik and Sinead got married, Tik started his own business, and then in 2016, they bought Copperline Farm in Citra, Florida, and merged their businesses into one. Tik has evented at the advanced level and has been long-listed and shortlisted for the Canadian National 3-day event team. Most recently, Tik's become interested in colt starting, expanding his horsemanship and understanding of the process of gentling and starting a green horse. He's apparently pretty good at it, winning Road to the Horse in 2024, and he'll be defending that title this coming weekend at Road to the Horse 2025. He also has a new book that's about to come out that basically was a journaling of his experience of learning to start colts and competing at Road to the Horse last year. That will be released pretty much right now. We've got a link to it in the show notes. It is called Starting in the Middle.
Hey, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Oh, doing well. Doing well. I'm seeing a couple guitars in the background. Is that you?
Nobody in this family plays the guitar.
They're just decorative.
One of them I won, and the other one we inherited.
Okay, well, that works.
Maybe when I retire from horses, I'll learn to play some musical instruments.
Can you retire from horses? I don't think I've ever heard of that. Is that you pretty much drop dead out of a saddle one day? Isn't that how it goes, or no?
Well, I've never heard of somebody retiring from horses before, but nothing's impossible, right? Could
You
happen.
looking to be the first?
I might be the first. Maybe you'll see me on stage playing guitar one day.
I like it. I did. Do you know Mark Rashid?
I do know Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. So see, he's got a side career as a musician and builds guitars in the whole 9 yards. So it's possible. I've actually got you written down here as Tik Maynard, the international man of mystery. I mean, you got the pentathlon stuff. So you're fencing, you're shooting, you're swimming, you're running cross country, show jumping. Now you're into this stuff. Then Road to the Horse and all of that stuff. Writing books. I mean, you pretty well have got the whole, and you're full on international, right? Are you so you're Canadian, but are you a U.S. citizen, or I know y'all have property in Florida, so how does that, was this a permanent move for you, or you here for a few years, or what?
Well, initially when I moved to the States, it was just going to be for a few years to learn a little bit. And then I got a girlfriend, and then she turned into a fiance, and then she turned into a wife, and then we got a farm, and then we had a kid, and then we got a dog, and then we got another kid. So I doubt I'm moving back home anytime soon.
I understand. Has all of that been Florida for you, or other places in the U.S.?
You know, we started dating in New Jersey, and that's where we got engaged. We both lived there for a few years. And I'm from the Pacific Northwest, which I love. I'm from Vancouver and that whole area, like Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. I love that. And she's from the Southeast, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. And so I wanted to live there, and she wanted to live here. So we compromised, and now we live in Florida all year round.
So what you're telling me is not only are you both in the horse business, but you even decided to move geographically on a diagonal. That's deep. I like that. Sticking commitment. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So has the weather thing? I know we talked about this a little bit, but the last few years, some of these researchers came up with a very damning bit of research for you and I, in that when you add the temperature and the humidity together, and they equal over 150, which for us 6 months out of the year is about 8 o'clock in the morning on. uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it toughens you up, like they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
huh. So we don't have to worry about saunas or any of that. We just free sweat all the time, right? So
Right. I didn't if you had told me this, I wouldn't believe it. But like for almost 6 months of the year, you can go out in the middle of the night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and just by stepping outside, you start sweating.
mhm.
Like within 30 seconds, you just got like a film of sweat on you.
Yep. I don't know about you. I drink a pretty phenomenal amount of water in the summertime, like 3-4 gallons a day. It just comes right out of me. I look like I've jumped in a swimming pool by 11 o'clock in the morning. I used to think when I was a little kid, when I'd see my dad working and he'd like sweat through his shirt, that was just like the coolest thing. And I'm over it now. It's not that cool anymore, you know.
Oh, no. You get to a certain point where you can appreciate whoever invented air conditioning and ice cubes and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So, Tick, we started everybody off with the icebreaker questions. These are for points and prizes. So, you want to be on your A game here. All right.
What kind of prizes are we talking about?
Well, there'll be a surprise at the end. I don't want to give you too much. I know you're a goal-oriented, competitive guy, but we'll keep it veiled for now.
I
Okay.
even like points though, like I'll collect like points at stores or gas stations. I don't even know what these points are for, but I'm motivated by points, so I'm good to go.
Would you say so? I've actually known a couple of professional athletes. One of them absolutely could not turn it off. I got to go on a duck hunt. He was a former, he was retired at this point, but he was an NFL quarterback. And if I said his name, you would know who he was. And, the deal with 9-year-olds in a duck blind is the 9-year-old shoots first and then everybody. But you give the kid, like he couldn't do it. He was competing with me. Like, he was going to shoot the duck first no matter what. He could not turn it off. Do you have that kind of level of competition going on with you, or not so much?
Not probably not that high, but there's a great
You seem a little more well adjusted than he was. Yeah,
there's an amazing movie about gives you the mindset of an athlete. It's about Steve Prefontaine. Do you know who Steve Prefontaine is?
I do not. No.
He's one of the America's top middle distance runners ever, and he passed away at a fairly young age, and he became kind of like a legend and an icon. And
Was he the one that had the heart attack in his driveway as he came back from a run? Or okay.
no, he got hit by a car. He was he was
Oh, dang.
probably drinking at the time, so it may or may not have been his fault. We don't really know because he died, but um, there's like a scene in the movie where he's are going to the Olympics and he's a famous runner. He's in Oregon at the Nike thing or whatever, and it's a kind of a kids day, and so they have all these 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids out, and they're running around the track, and they're coming along the home stretch, and one of the kids starts to sprint ahead of them to the finish, and they've all just been jogging, and Steve kind of runs up, grabs the kid by the back of the shirt, and goes like, "Whoa, Tiger, you're not ready to get ahead of me yet." And then he passes the line first, ahead of all these other kids who are jogging behind him. And that night, his girlfriend goes, "Steve, like, what are you doing? That would have meant so much to that kid. Like, that would have been such a big story." And Steve just goes like, "It's a mindset. Like basically like nobody crosses the line ahead of me ever. It's just like once it happens once, it can start happening again."
Hmm. I can understand that. Yep. Uh, Habits and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
little things. Yep. Well, our first question for you is one of character. If you were a Jedi, what percent chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
Uh I'm gonna go with is this like I immediately become a Jedi or I was born a Jedi?
Well, I don't think anybody's born. It's an attained. You have gotten there and passed all the tests. So now, do you float the coffee cup to you just to make life a little easier on Tick, or do
So
you do it the way you're
so
supposed to?
I'm gonna say the chances are pretty low. I'm gonna go with 2%. And I think I'm going to base that on
Okay.
two things. One is the character that I've developed up to this point, and then the other thing is that although I'm not a Star Wars expert, I'm assuming that the people that sort of pass you to make you a Jedi and that teach you, that they're also somewhat responsible for only passing and making people Jedis that are going to be good Jedis, not bad Jedis.
You see, when you said 2%, I immediately said he's going to go with love of dairy as his reason. But I get them wrong sometimes. Also, as to your characterization of the Jedi, remember that Anakin killed all the younglings, so they can be fooled, right? I mean, there was Sith right under their nose, right there. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
Morning or evening?
evening.
Okay, that's interesting. So like, what time do you start your day with the horses? You're not a 6 o'clock in the morning, crack of dawn, getting after it, or or that's just not your preference, but the discipline makes you do it, or what?
Our day doesn't revolve, the timing of our day doesn't revolve around the horses. It revolves around the kids, getting them up, like what time they have to get up, what time they got to get dressed, and what time we got to get them to school. They're both at school. And so our work day revolves around that. And, the kids are up, 6 o'clock often. And so I'm kind of getting up with them. My wife often gets up earlier. She'll go she's a morning person. She'll get up and go to the gym from 5 to 6 in the morning and be back by 6:30.
So when you're like working on your book and stuff, you're 11 o'clock pecking away when the family's asleep, or how does that work for you?
No, it's just to here's the thing. I don't know if you've had this answer before, but I'm not really a morning person or an evening person.
Hmm.
I'm at my most productive, probably like if I was going to work on my book between uh like 8 and 12 in the morning.
Okay.
But I never get a chance to work on my book between 8 and 12 in the morning because I've just dropped my kids off to school and then I got a whole day of horse stuff. So I'm doing my book. Usually I was working on it in the morning, sort of before the kids would wake up. So sort of like 4:30 to 6:30 in the morning, that kind of deal. But not because I'm a morning person, just because that was the only time I could really fit it in.
Well, discipline beats motivation every time, right? You do what you have to do, not what's easy or what
Yeah.
might be what you want to do. I like it.
Exactly. You just do what you got to do.
How long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
Oh, very briefly. 1.5 seconds.
Okay. So you like still some crispiness to your cookie, huh?
Well, I just don't like I don't want to risk it falling apart in the milk. I'd rather have it slightly crispy than have like little bits of crumbs in my milk.
So I find a dichotomy here because I would think as this athlete, and you really have been an athlete for your whole life, this competitive edge, I would think you would be pushing right up to the moment
Mhm.
of when does the cookie fall, or not a risk averse person at all, but a flinging it all out there,
No, no, that's
consequences
that's
be
true.
damned.
That's true. It's the same with roasting marshmallows. Is I will push it a little bit to the edge. I guess I was coming up with like a time that would be like the average of different kinds of cookies, but I guess it depends on the kind of cookie that we're talking, how long I'm gonna keep it in the milk.
Fair enough. Do you have a standout horse memory?
I mean, I got a lot of standout horse memories. My most recent one is probably Road to the Horse and going through that experience with that horse. We named him Tomcat and brought him home after. And I mean, the amount that I felt sort of connected or bonded or I don't know what the word is, like emotionally attached to this horse is that I got in 3 days is probably more than I've ever been attached to a horse in, I mean, 3 years, 3 months, 3 months, 3 years. Like it was by going through that amount of sort of intensity together, you really come out really attached.
Band of brothers kind of a thing, a shared experience like that. Yep, I get it. We'll get more into that here in a little bit. Do you have a bucket list item with a horse? So is there still some big goal on the horizon that you haven't accomplished that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, I got a lot of things. I mean, I don't know if I'd name one thing in particular, but I'd like to learn. There's a lot of disciplines I'd like to learn a little bit more about. Reining, cutting, working equitation, liberty, reined cow horse, polo. In my sport of 3-day eventing, I'd like to compete at the 5-star level. Um, I'd like to one day take a horse to the Grand Prix level in dressage or show jumping. A lot of stuff.
Okay. It's good to have goals out there. You're definitely too young to not have one. Do you have a bucket list item that has nothing to do with horses?
Um, I other than just trying to make more time to spend with my family in Vancouver and my brothers and my nieces and nephews and stuff like that. I mean, not really anything in particular. Maybe to do another book. I'd like to do another book, a third
Okay.
one.
Do you have a favorite place to eat?
I definitely do not have a favorite. I got a lot of places that I like and appreciate, both here in Ocala, Florida, and also at home in Vancouver and different places I've been. But I appreciate food and I like food, but I'm not sort of like a foodie, and I can't think of much that I have like really favorites with. I don't have a favorite I don't know, favorite pair of socks or favorite clothes or favorite car or favorite bike. Certainly don't have a favorite kid.
If you did, we'll keep that quiet for sure. Yeah. What I kind of hate these kind of questions too, because I'm also not a favorites person. I have like a group of the best, but sorting between those seven and hierarchically
Yeah.
arranging them is not something I would find important. But um, what would you say would be the most, air quotes, most important quality for a horseman or horsewoman to have? It could be a few things. It doesn't have to be just one. So,
Well, I think the first question for me, which I've been thinking about, is whether and I think how you define a horseman is obviously it's an individual trait, I think. And I think the first question is whether my definition of horseman includes being a good person or not. Because I think you can have people that are quite talented with horses that are not always the nicest people around people. And so, by my definition, would that still be a good horseman, or does being a good horseman include being a good person? I think probably an openness to continue learning.
okay. I have to back up though and ask you on the other question because I have a feeling we're thinking about the same guy here. But to your mind, do you have to also be a good horseman or be a good person in general to not be a good horseman? Because yeah, there are some pretty skilled guys that I don't want to have a beer with in this business for sure. So
Yeah, maybe we almost need like another name for them. Maybe not a horseman, but just a horse trainer or a good horse trainer, but they're not a horseman.
yeah,
Kind of like a Jedi. Kind of like a
yeah.
Jedi. Like, are you even really a Jedi if you're not using it for good? Like, I feel like it's sort of like the way we would define Jedi would be like if you were using your Jedi powers not for good, you wouldn't be a Jedi.
But everybody would have their challenges, right? Those moments where you're tempted, maybe, or something. You know,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
theoretically, I don't know. I'm told no one's perfect. My wife mostly is the one that says that, but Bay or Sorrel?
What's that?
Bay or Sorrel?
So I gotta tell you a little embarrassed. I don't know if it's that embarrassing, but when I went to Road to the Horse this year, and we had all these. Have you seen Road to the Horse?
Hmm. Yeah.
So when I went there this past March, and we had we had all these 3-year-old quarter horses from Texas coming off the uh the ramp because we get to watch them beforehand. And this cowboy next to me, he goes, look at that sorrel. You know what I said?
What's a sorrel?
That was a sorrel. You know what we call a sorrel in the English world?
Chestnut. Yeah.
Just yeah. I was like, what the hell's a sorrel? What are you talking about?
Let me say that I love that you're willing to admit that, and that doesn't make me think less of you in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it is like you're Canadian, and there's going to be some word differences and all that kind of stuff. So that's no big deal. But I love that you said that. I really do. Okay.
Yeah, I heard somebody say sorrel was last March at Road to the Horse.
So bay or chestnut or gray or roan or any other,
So
do you have a particular favorite color?
So in the judges meeting for Road to the Horse, this is a very serious meeting. They've got the 5 judges, they've got the Road to the Horse organizers, they got the competitors. It's the day before it starts. Everybody's a little nervous, and they're running through the rules, seeing if everybody has any questions. And there were a couple disagreements about things. It was a little tense for a moment, um, and and there's mandatory rail work. So the mandatory rail work begins with walk left, trot left, lope left, and then it goes walk right, trot right, lope right, and then you got pick up the feet and dismount and lead and turn and stuff like that. And I raised my hand and I said, by the rules, is it okay if we canter instead of lope?
Splitting hairs there, huh? Yeah.
But it's like the difference between a fiddle and a violin, right? Like in the English world, we never talk about loping or sorrels.
Well, so I think there is technically a distinction. I think a lope is a very slow canter that lacks the moment of suspension. So like a
Hey,
Western pleasure. So there's no way in hell you're doing that on a colt, because that's a more highly trained. You've slowed them down to, So
I want to fact check. I don't know if we can take a break from this at some point and fact check the definition of lope, but
you
I was under the impression it was the same thing.
well, I think colloquially people do use them interchangeably, but and I'm guilty of it myself. But I think technically, and again, technically, so that depends on what group you're looking up the definition from. Because just like we're talking about sorrel, if you go to Europe, the halflinger, which we would call a palomino, they're going to call a sorrel over there. So who's right, who's wrong? The Tom Thumb bit is something different in the United States than it is in England, and then it's something different in Australia, and everybody
Uh,
thinks they know what the Tom Thumb is. So, but you're more than welcome to Google that and fact check it or whatever. But
I'm gonna go with gray.
okay. I'm right there with you, especially a dapple gray. Like it doesn't get any better than that. Yep.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer? I feel like these are good questions. They're kind of reminding me of stories, but we've got almost 40-foot camper that we take with us sometimes because we're on the road a lot. And we got to a campground and the turn it was just hard to back it in. And and when you get to some of these campgrounds, everybody's sitting there in the evening by their campfire drinking and watching everybody like try to back up. And I come in and I go to back it up one time and I just got out and I went around and my wife got out and she went around and she got in and she backed it up for me and everybody there drinking their beer by the fire was had a good laugh at my expense. But she's definitely the better at backing up the campers and horse trailers, not me. Man, you are a man of contradictions. Like I'm envisioning you if we had I've pitched this idea that we should have like horse show Friday night trailer backing competitions just as like the beer drinking preemptive to the show or whatever. And I'm picturing this competitive guy who's like, I want another try if you didn't win it or something. And here you are stepping out the truck, let the wife do it, hand your man card over to the guy. The next thing he tears a corner off and hands it back to you. Like, I love it. That's perfect. So is she equally competitive? She also has that same.
Yeah. I mean, I would say she's equally competitive. I'd say in some circles she's more competitive.
Do y'all have a challenge there competing with one another, or is that not a thing with y'all?
Uh, I don't think so. I think especially not now that we help each other with stuff. And so now that, if I'm helping with a horse or she's helping me with a horse and we're looking after the horses together, it's almost like if you go to a competition with your coach, like your coach is wanting you to do as well as you are, if not more sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though we're both competing, we're also each other's kind of like coach and teammate. So I mean, I don't think on either our parts there's any competitiveness at all.
That's good. I like your fellow countryman Jordan Peterson. I'm a real big fan of, and I think one of his definitions of who your friends really are is fantastic because it's something people don't think of. But according to him, your friends are people who you can tell good news to. And if you
Yeah.
think about it, there's a lot of people you tell them good news and they immediately kind of downplay it, or they're not truly happy for you. They are now jealous of you, and some sort of defensiveness or something else is going to take place there. There's really not that many people you can tell good news to. um, so it's fantastic, especially since you're married, because the basis of that should be friendship. And if your wife's not your friend and you can't tell her good news, or vice versa, I would say that constitutes a problem.
I I feel like I could tell you good news.
I I hope so. Yeah, I would be genuinely happy for you. Yep. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Um, would you tell us? And I have a feeling you're going to deliver on this because you've already surprised me multiple times in this conversation, short though it has been. Would you tell us something unexpected about you?
Uh, I guess I don't really know what people are expecting, but that's a hard
I'll
one to.
tell you one. You have two guitars hanging behind you, and you don't play guitar. That was unexpected for me. I
Yeah, I
figured
don't
you
play
were
the
gonna.
guitar. I can tell you a couple things I do. I can juggle and I can ride a unicycle.
Okay.
My first sort of main equestrian pursuit was mounted games, Prince Philip games, where you're in teams of four and you do relay races like your little kids on ponies. That was probably the main thing I was into. How's that? Couple things there. That good?
I like it. Absolutely. Do you ever take side trips when you travel? So I guess you're saying you're bringing the family and a camper. So do y'all ever, like, my wife is great about arranging that kind of stuff. We find some little hole in the wall restaurant to eat at, local dive, or a place to go hiking on the way or something. So do y'all arrange those sorts of things as well?
Very rarely. Occasionally we do. And I love to do that. It's a matter of finding the time in between stuff. Sometimes my wife Sinead will want to do something once we're at a destination, but if we're going somewhere, she usually wants to get from point A to point B and not stop halfway for lunch and a hike. Whereas I love stopping halfway for lunch and a hike and then jump in the lake and then keep driving. But usually it's a matter of like getting to the thing and then teaching the clinic or competing and then going home.
I understand. Sometimes you go to a town and they ask, well, what was it like? And you're like, all I saw was the event center and the airport. I have no idea what that town's like. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yeah. It's probably not in my top five, but I'd put it in my like top 10 toppings.
Thoughts or feelings? So do you consider yourself more of a cerebral, rational, logical thinking person, or intuitive, go with your gut, feel your way through it person?
Thoughts.
Okay. Me too. Although I do think, like, for the horse part of it, you have to embrace the feeling side too. You got to kind of have that combination. But I probably am about as far on the rational side without being autistic as you can get. So I
I
get it.
think I, I think I'm probably 65-35.
I like it. And let me say, I was going to judge you if those did not equal 100. So I'm glad that you got that done. You're not a product of the U.S. education system there. All right. I'll try to reel it in. Right lead or left lead? Do you have one that is more natural to you, one you have to be a little more intentional about, or have you sorted all that out?
I think I mean I feel like I like both leads, but there's one time. Have you ever seen these trackers that will you put on the horse's girth or something like that, and it measures the heart rate and it measures your beats per minute and it measures like 20 different things? So I put one of those on my horse. I only done it one time, and it'll tell you how much time in your ride you spend in the walk, how much time you spend in the trot, how much time you spend in the canter. It'll also tell you how much time you spent going left and how much time you spent going right. And in my mind, I thought I had done equal left and right. And I remember it had been, I don't remember which direction it was, but it was more like I don't know, probably like 65, 35 or it was like an amount where I was really surprised. Actually, I
Mhm.
wasn't even close to 50-50 in how much I had gone in one direction or the other. So I think that's probably one of those questions for me that I would probably not be an accurate judge of how I really am.
I like it.
Like people when they think they sit in the middle, but they're not sitting in the middle, or they think their hands are still and their hands aren't still. I think I'd need to have somebody watch me a couple times.
So I got to ask this: why was that a borrowed thing or at an event, or why did you only use it the one time and not play with it later to sort that
Yeah,
out?
I was at I was at somebody's place and they had one and I just borrowed it for a ride I was doing. Yeah.
So I'll share with you. I think I've said this on the podcast before, but my very first paid riding job was riding racehorses,
Yeah.
which meant posting to the left all day, you know, and it has ruined me to this day. If I'm going to pick up the right diagonal, I have to consciously, I'm either going to double sit to do it or something. But if I'm not thinking about it 100% of the time, I will pick up the left diagonal unconsciously. It ruined me pretty much. And it's never been important enough for me to work on or something like that, but it is weird how you pick up those little things and you're not aware of them. Anyway.
Yeah.
Would you say that your hands or your legs are better? And we're not talking like modeling here. We're talking as an equestrian, hands on the reins, legs on the ribs kind of stuff.
Um, God, I don't really feel like I got great hands or great legs. I don't know. Uh, feel like I'm still working on both. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't even know. I feel like that's a question like do I go more left or right? I should ask my dressage uh instructor, see what he says. I'm having a lesson on Friday. I'll ask him.
Okay. I like it.
No, we can talk at the end.
Unless they're German, in which case their perspective on your hands would be very skewed, I would say. But anyway,
He's Dutch. It's like one step up from German.
I got you. Besides a horse, what animal would you most like to ride?
Oh wow.
This could be fantasy too. It could be any Pegasus, whatever you can think of.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with uh dolphin.
Okay. Just don't ever mess with a manatee because that's illegal if you didn't know. You touch one of those things down there and you got problems. So
Probably illegal to touch dolphins too. I don't know.
I've done it. So if you can, they pretty well wanted you to because they're in
The,
complete control of that. So
the dolphins?
hmm
Or manatees.
dolphins, yeah, manatees go like 0.5 miles an hour, so they're not getting out of the way of squat. But dolphin got close enough to you to let you touch him. He meant to. I've done it
Where'd
from
you
a boat where they're beside you on. It's actually a kayak in Florida out off of the coast. We went like 5 miles out. It's a buddy of mine's wife and their son, my godson, sitting between my legs. He was like 4 or 5, and we paddled way the hell out there, and some dolphins came right alongside, and I was able to just reach out beside and stroke one's back as he did his thing. It was one of the coolest moments of my life, to be honest with you. But anyway,
you went that far out in a kayak amongst dolphins with your little kid?
not my
That's
kid, friend's kid, godson.
uh,
Yeah, so I grew up on a lake. I mean, I'm as comfortable on the water as you can get. So, and she was perfect. She didn't try to paddle at all, so I had complete control. So we were good. It's when you get the. Have you and Sinead ever done that? That's a test of marriage. If you try to go canoeing together, it's like the swans sinking heads bobs on. If you can survive canoeing together, you're gonna have a marriage. If you can't,
I I'm the guy that when we go canoeing or kayaking always wants to get the double, and if we're going cycling, I want to get a tandem bicycle. But She's not up for any of that. She's gonna get the single kayak. She's gonna get the single bicycle. She's like she's got to be in charge of her own little space there.
and back up the trailer.
And back.
Do you agree that hot dog water is the opposite of holy water?
I've never had hot dog water.
That's probably good. It's one of the most gross things we can come up with.
I'm gonna go with like I need more information on that one. I don't know the answer to that one.
Do you have a horse industry related pet peeve?
Of course. I guess the biggest thing that gets me kind of riled up is when people get on their high horse, so to speak, about their way being the right way.
Have you been on the internet, Tik? Because that's pretty prevalent out there.
If I want to put myself in a bad mood, all I got to do is scroll through Facebook for about 30 seconds.
Well, people will watch a 5-second clip and then give a 30-minute dissertation on how that person has no idea what they're doing, right? It's mind-boggling.
I mean, the biggest thing, I'm not really against like people having strong opinions about stuff, but I guess the biggest problem with how most conversations take place just in general, but especially on social media, is there's not a lot of context or nuance to the conversation. It's like summing everything up into like a meme or a photo or a 10-second clip or like a conversation that is like set up to be adversarial rather than having like an in-depth conversation between two friends that have different opinions or like something that's longer, like in a well-researched article or book or something like that, where you can actually understand the backstory and the context behind a different opinion.
That's why I do 3-hour podcasts, man. You're speaking my language right here. Are you decisive or indecisive?
I usually start off indecisive and then I'll be prepared to make the decision when it comes down to it. I'm not going to
Okay.
let it go unmade, put it that way.
Are you a stick with it once you've made it, or are you flexible down the road and you're willing to or happy to adjust?
I think every year I get more flexible. You know, even I think about reading books. I used to want to finish every book I started, and now I feel like I can start 3 or 4 books and not finish any of them.
That's interesting. So people would generally think as you age, you get more rigid, but I'm kind of like you. I'm more. I think it's confidence thing. Like I know I can handle it. So whichever way this goes, I don't.
Yeah,
This is not important enough for me to be invested in. It'll be all right. Kind of.
yeah,
Maybe not.
exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. I agree.
And do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
I do not have a favorite dinosaur. I don't know how deep it is, but I watched my octopus teacher, and I have a new affinity for octopuses after watching that.
I I I also share an affinity with that. I was just recommended to watch that movie, which I haven't yet, but now it's
Yeah,
definitely on my list.
you should watch it. Yeah.
So, well, that concludes. Let me tabulate your score here. So, Tick, champion that you have our reigning high score of all time. You have got 5,163 points. And
No way.
absolutely. And that entitles you to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment, your choice.
I think I'm gonna. Can I hear the statistics on what people normally choose first? Do
It's
most people choose?
about 50-50. This is kind of like an introvert extrovert test. Some people would rather fight a bear than be complimented publicly, and some people are happy to have it. So I've even had some returning guests that pick one time and then the other time. So
I'm gonna go with the compliment.
all right. Well, I'm actually glad. So I would have probably said something different before this lightning round set of questions because I've learned quite a bit about you in this. I really admire your openness. You seem to be one of the qualities I would associate with good horsemen that aren't assholes, that are actually decent people, is that you don't seem to have much of an ego in this. You're perfectly fine, warts and all. Here's some mistakes I've made. I let my wife back up the trailer, just whatever, kind of go with the flow. Definitely put you in the camp of someone I would be cool with spending some time around, rather than someone I would be challenged with spending some time around. Oh, and all. And you got kind of that like eclectic, quirky sort of personality, which I absolutely love. You're not a bland, no salt and pepper kind of guy. There's definitely some nuances and some things to figure out, some complexities, which I definitely like. And then I would also say, kind of on that same train, um, there are things I might expect about you if I were to read like your CV, so to speak. You're seeing an athlete and all this, and there would be certain traits you might associate. Oh, he's going to be like this, and then you kind of have times when it's a right turn, a veer off of the trail, and you're like, what the hell? All right, so there's more to this guy than what you might expect, and I always appreciate that about people when there are layers and it is a little more complex and not simple. So that would be my compliment for you.
Thank you very much. And what would you like, Daniel? Would you like an awkward silence or a compliment?
I would definitely prefer the awkward silence. Yeah, but you don't have to return the deal.
How long is our awkward silence if that's what we're doing?
Well, we can do it. It's just however long you can handle it. Okay, that's probably getting painful for the audience. I feel like I have to save them at this point. But that was glorious. I
I
enjoyed
was
that.
I,
Yeah,
I was gonna break it soon if you weren't. Yeah, we can't let it go on all day. We got a audience at home. We can always shorten that in the editing though.
yeah, yeah. I don't. I want to be respectful of your time, and you got kids and all of that stuff going on. But yeah,
There-
it's dangerous to
there-
get into
people,
two
when
competitive guys with a contest like that. Yeah.
people listen to this, they're not gonna know that we were silent for 54 minutes.
Straight eye contact too, the whole time. Absolutely the whole time. Well, Tik, first question I always open up with when we get serious. For those that may not know you, would you give us kind of the 30,000-foot view of what it is that you do in the horse business?
The main thing that I do these days is I train and I probably compete 3-day event horses. And for those of you that don't know what 3-day eventing is, it's dressage, show jumping, and cross country. And at various times in my career, I've had different numbers of horses. I'm competing at different levels. Right now, this year, I've got 3 horses that are competing. And usually the second half of my day is either teaching lessons to people that ship in for lessons, or I usually have 3 or 4 horses in training for other people that I'm training for them, and they'll come down and ride their horse a couple times a month, or they'll send me the horse for a few months and I'll put some training on it or start the horse and then send the horse back. So that's sort of the main thing I'm doing. There's a lot of other stuff that I'm doing as well. The biggest thing recently is obviously the Road to the Horse competition. And then I'm also enjoying recently doing some video stuff for the NF Plus platform, where I'm sort of teaching to the camera to an audience there. And that was a big learning process for me, being in front of the camera like that. And I still, if we're doing a 4-day shoot about something, I still feel pretty awkward the first 2 days, but I kind of settle into it by the last 2 days. But I think it's like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
I'm gonna try to go with this chronologically, but your first step up into the world of competition was as a pentathlete, and now you're doing 3-day eventing. So is there anything in particular about sort of these multiple event competitions that draws you? Are you a person that gets bored easy and you got to have different things to think about rather than a super specific thing, or is that just happenstance that those happen to be two things that you were drawn to?
I think a little bit of everything that you just said. I think I get interested in a lot of different stuff. Whether it's, reading books and starting a bunch but not finishing them all, or learning how to juggle or ride a unicycle. Or the other day I bought a book on card tricks, and I was trying to learn card tricks on the airplane. And I've got Duolingo on my phone, and I'm learning Spanish and French and German, and dabbled in a couple other languages. So I kind of like to have something going on all the time. As far as pentathlon goes, I think I can't even remember how I got into it. I got into it through Pony Club, and Pony Club has an event called Tetrathalon, which is 4 events instead of 5. The only thing it doesn't have is the fencing. So I got into it through horses, and I enjoyed most of the events. The only event I probably didn't really enjoy that much was shooting. I'm not a very talented, not a natural shot, put it that way. And then in 3-day eventing, I enjoy 3-day eventing a lot, but to be totally honest, I think I could enjoy any horse sport if I had the right horse for that sport. I think what I appreciate more and more as I get older is not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, but taking a horse that has a athletic and mental ability to kind of succeed in one thing, and you're like bringing out the potential, and you're not trying to take a horse that's good at this and make him good at that. But I bet if I had a good reining horse, I'd love reining. If I had a good, you know, competitive trail horse, I'd love competitive trail. Or training that horse to do that, but that horse has sort of that natural ability to want to do it.
So I wasn't intending to go here first, but it seems like the perfect segue. So Tomcat, who you got from Road to the Horse, I'm assuming he is more cow horse bred and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm also going to make the assumption that that's not the type of bloodlines and pedigrees that you have spent much of your time around. So am I wrong there? Do you have a lot of experience with that? And then I guess what I'm getting at is, what are the differences versus thoroughbreds, warm bloods, some tall hawked, long legged jumping thing that you would be more used to than that kind of horse?
Yeah, this is the first quarter horse I've ever really had for this amount of time. I've kind of helped other people with quarter horses at clinics and stuff like that, but I think I'd struggle to kind of put it into words. But I think there's a big difference between different breeds, and I think quarter horses in particular. I think his intelligence, his problem solving ability, his ability to learn quickly in pressure situations, um, how he can learn to even something like stand still quicker than a horse that, you get like some of these thoroughbreds, and it's just harder for them, I find. Like I'm there's stereotyping, there's exceptions to everything, but their tendency to move is a little bit easier for them, whereas I find with this quarter horse and a couple others I've worked with, their ability to kind of get them to stand still or plant their feet is a little easier. I'm going to actually ask, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you questions on your
Oh yeah,
podcast, but
definitely.
I want to hear your opinion on that.
So I have read a pretty good cross section of horses going on into the Iberian breeds, the thoroughbreds, and gaited horses, and just about all of it. But I've definitely spent more time on the cowbred quarter horses than anything else. I would generally agree with you. What I would say is that they tend to be able to take intensity in a way very few other horses can, and so the rate at which you could bring them along tends to be pretty darn quick. I find them to be mentally maturing a lot earlier than a lot of other breeds are. Now, I wouldn't say, like for instance, the race horses, and I'm sure it's kind of the same with the eventing horses, that those horses are a little bit like a Ferrari or something. They tend to operate best at higher RPMs. When you're flying and it's kind of like we could die here at any second with a wrong step, that's really when they are like most engaged and in tune. And when you try to slow them down, it's like a top at low RPMs, they wobble. That's where they get a lot shakier and a lot more insecure and everything. That's a generalization, of course. Like you said, there are definitely exceptions to that, but this is one of those things I try to talk about a little bit because I feel like some of the clinicians give people the impression that a horse is almost like a mechanical thing and you can do anything with this mechanical thing. And there's a lot more difference between some of these horses than people tend to realize. And like you say, there are definitely square peg round hole situations out there where you can affect this animal to a degree, but you're not going to change the course of them that much to be able to have that animal comfortably do this other thing. That's just not what they're designed for, particularly with some of the breeding. Like you're talking about reining horses. To me, they're like the golden retrievers of the horse world. They are just born broke. I mean, there isn't a lot of fight. They're very, very obedient and biddable, and so that natural tendency that they have is so strong. It really makes the job just very, very easy. You know, so that would be my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, you see the same thing in the dog world, trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Somebody, works long hours in New York City and they buy a border collie.
Hmm.
They're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Uh, get something that's going to fit better into what you want to do with them.
absolutely. So within the pentathlete world, I did want to ask you a little bit more about that. Like, how did you? Because you got to a very high level in that. So, I mean, this is fencing, this is cross country running. Like, was that a full time job for you? I mean, just the complexity of training and all of these different things that aren't necessarily related or even taking place in the same physical place. Like, I'm guessing if you got to go take fencing lessons, that's probably not in the building right beside the track and the shooting range and the swimming pool, and all of it is so
Yeah.
displaced. I'm imagining like that I could just see a logistical nightmare in trying to keep all of that. So what was that like?
So I got into pentathlon when I was in high school and I kind of dabbled in it, but I wasn't training a lot for it. And then I got a little bit more serious when I was at university. I went to the University of British Columbia, which is in Vancouver, and I was training. Aside from going to school, I was training 6 days a week, and I'd probably be doing two of those five things every day. Before school or after school. And then after I graduated, I think I graduated in 2005 from UBC, and then for 3 years I trained for Modern Pentathlon pretty much full time. And then for money, I would apply for grants, like grants that athletes get or through the sport or through the Canadian sports system. And then I would work sort of odd jobs, and I'd also teach some riding lessons. And when I was doing that full time for about 3 years, I'd be traveling out of the country probably maybe 6 or 7 times a year for various competitions or World Cups. And I'd probably, when I was at home, I'd be probably training 6 days a week, and I'd probably be training three and sometimes four of those sports a day.
I believe it. When I was kind of apprentice horse training, like I lived the life of a monk. I mean, I ate it, breathed it, slept it. Like it was my whole day, every day. There really wasn't a whole lot in my world other than that. So you come from a family of equestrians, and you said you came to that from Pony Club. So was the show jumping side of that like your obvious peak aspect of it, or not so much? Were you happy to get off of a horse a little bit and swim and run and all the other things, or what?
You're talking about for Modern Pentathlon. Is
Yes.
that so? We're going through the five events to give you like a recap. Show jumping was definitely my strongest event out of the five. Uh, un well, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. The reality of show jumping in modern pentathlon is that you draw a horse. So whatever country or competition you go to, you don't bring your own horse. You draw one out of a pool, and no matter how good or talented or experienced a show jumper you are, you can still just draw a horse that's going to have a couple rails down. And the opposite is also true. You can, there's competitors, modern pentathletes that would train, they'd be swimming 5 days a week, but they would only train riding once a month. And they'd be just kind of good enough that they could perch on the horse and steer around, and you can draw a horse that's not going to have any rails down. So, over the course of an entire year, the better riders would statistically do better. But at any one particular competition, whether it's a World Cup or the World Championships, you could be the best rider in the world and still have a couple rails, and you could be like one of the very weaker riders and still jump a clear round. So the way that was, because of the reality that it doesn't incentivize a lot of pentathletes to train a lot for the show jumping, whereas the swimming, the points you get is directly related to the swim time you get. There isn't really any luck involved on picking a horse. And so people were much more motivated to train for swimming and running. And that's part of the reason why the riding level got weaker and weaker in modern pentathlon, to the point where they're now, after the last Olympics, this past Olympics in Paris, that was the last Olympics in which they're having riding. And the
Hmm.
next Olympics in LA, the riding portion will have been taken out and replaced by sort of like a obstacle running parkour type event. In
So does
terms
that
of,
make your heart weep?
uh, no, like I think if everybody in pentathlon had had sort of enjoyed the riding and treated it with an appreciation and respect, and they had taken it out, I think it would have made my heart weep. But uh, most countries that do pentathlon in the world, uh, they're recruiting athletes from swimming, because swimming is the out of the five events, swimming is the one where it's probably the most difficult to start when you're 17 or 18 years old and still get to the level you need to get to. So what most countries do is they'll go to like 15-year-old swimmers that are not going to quite cut it on the world stage because they're like 3 seconds too slow or something like that. So they're still really good swimmers, and they'll recruit those swimmers into the modern pentathlon program. And so I would argue that most people internationally did not really appreciate or respect riding, and so that they took it out. It's just kind of like it's better for the horse, really. It's better for equestrian sports too. Like, if we don't want to lose, show jumping, dressage, and theater eventing in the Olympics, if we don't want to lose those, we got to do a good job of holding our world accountable to doing a good job and a fair job with horses, so that to the public it doesn't look like we're idiots and abusing these horses. And so when we see what's happening in the pentathlon world, I think it's a shame in some ways, but I think overall it's probably good that they took it out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We seem to continually be getting black eyes on the world stage on that stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to silence my phone here.
And then I was a fairly good runner. It was 3 kilometers. So I definitely wasn't like a American college athlete. I was getting close to running a 9-minute 3 kilometer, which is good for the pentathlon world. But when you look at top college runners, they're running not only under 9 minutes, but some of them run under 8 minutes. So it's all right, but it's not great. Swimming, uh, that was probably I was kind of probably middle of the pack in swimming. It was 200 meters, and I'd swim like a 2:13, 2:14 kind of time. The top swimmers in modern pentathlon would be swimming right around 2 minutes flat. But again, top swimmers are swimming closer to 150. And then fencing, I really enjoyed fencing. It's one of those kind of sports that not a lot of people get introduced to, but it's a pretty fun sport actually. And have you ever tried fencing?
I have not. No.
Yeah, it's an interesting sport. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I would, with my personality, I would have a hard time not turning that into swashbuckling, or it may take me a little while to get serious about it, but I would sure enjoy playing with it for sure. I've done a lot of pool noodle sword fighting on a horse and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and then my weakest sport was pistol shooting. So is it with an air pistol from 10 meters, and you're trying to hit the target about the size of a grapefruit, and the middle, the 10 ring is about the size of a dime, and you're standing there with one-handed, and you're trying to shoot the target. And yeah, that was my weakest event. I kind of have my adrenaline up, and for that kind of shooting, you want to have your adrenaline down and your breathing slow. And I struggled with that a little bit, probably because I was a little competitive.
hmm. So do you feel like with that sort of background that it gives you a certain insight and maybe empathy toward horses? So, in other words, I'm sure you've dealt with this with people that you're coaching. Most people don't have a good grasp of where their body is and what it's actually doing. And if you've done much in the way of athletics, you have to be kind of coachable and all of that. And so I'm sure, like as a student for your dressage instructor, you're probably an ideal sort of student. There's no talking back and all that. I've had students where I have to video them and say, "Here, look, your hands are high. I promise, I'm not lying. Like this is really where they are. Look." So I doubt any of that's going on with you. So do you feel like that gives you an edge?
I think yeah, I think it gives you an edge, but I think no matter what you do in life, if you get passionate about something, it's going to give you an edge in the next thing you do because um you learn how to think through stuff and I find everything, I bet you if you were like a world-class gardener in some way, like if you had invested time into really getting really good at that, you'd find some parallel that would help you with riding. I think if you're getting good at anything and then you're trying to get good at something else, I think there's going to be you're going to find ways those things overlap in your mind.
I think of that kind of like this. If you ever have those moments where, like, the nerdy kid in high school steps up with a guitar at the talent show, just blows everybody the hell away, and you're like, holy crap, Sid is a badass, and none of us had any idea. Um, Once you have assumed badassness in some form, then it's easy to overflow that cup into others. That's how I would think about that. Um,
Yeah.
the confidence that comes with it and all of those other things. Well, why don't we get a little bit into kind of the mindset of an athlete? I did want to ask you this. I saw a I don't remember what it was, a video or something, but it was kind of the mentality of people that operate under pressure like professional athletes. And basically what it boiled down to was, in scenarios where most people would feel scared, they feel excited. So, for instance, you're heading into Road to the Horse, and that may be something outside of your comfort zone. I know you've done a lot of preparation for it before last year's event. I'm sure you're working hard on it this year, but what's your mental prep to walk into that? Now you know what a sorrel is, so you don't have to worry about that happening again. So, what kind of
Yeah, I think competing is just like anything else. You just the more you do it, the better you get at it. Assuming assuming you're doing it the right way, kind of. Sometimes people say, "Oh, my horse should be able to do this. He has a lot of experience," and I'm kind of thinking like, what kind of experience? You can have a lot of different experiences. A horse can have a good experience or bad experience. You can have a horse that's the most experienced horse in the world, but it still doesn't tell me what kind of experiences that horse had, right? I think the motivation to compete can come from many different places. I think probably for the vast majority of competitors, it probably comes from an unhealthy place, like you're running away from something or you feel a need to prove something. And I think there's some athletes that are competing out of a healthy, positive place, like that you're trying to have fun, or it's a has a playful feeling to it and an exuberance rather than an anxiety. I think it also depends a lot on the sport that you're doing. I think one of the things that makes a well, it's probably for a horse or a person. One of the biggest things that's going to determine your success in that particular sport is the level that you get up for it or not. Like that you get like the adrenaline, like if I'm running, if I'm going to do a 3K race and I don't have enough adrenaline, that's going to work against me. If I'm going to do shooting and I have too much adrenaline, that's going to work against me. If you're a racehorse and they don't have enough adrenaline, they're not kind of raring to go, that's going to work against you. But if you're doing like a competitive trail thing and the horse thing has to be at the walk and it's got to be slow and exact and the horse got to be low and thoughtful, too much adrenaline is going to work against you, right? And I would say every year, kind of as I get older, I find probably two things. One is I'm able to gradually get better at having the right amount of adrenaline for the right thing. And the other thing is I feel slightly less desire to compete every year. And when I first heard about Road to the Horse in 2012, it was something that I really wanted to do, and I spent like kind of 10 years kind of making sure that my name was in the mix for somebody that might get picked. And by the time they invited me, I was almost 42, and I was getting to the point where I probably was almost ready to say, no, I don't want to do it. It's too big of an ask for me, and I don't feel the need to like go out and prove myself in this way. And I wouldn't be surprised if the amount that I compete now and the amount that I compete in 10 years from now, it looks very different. I have no idea what your original question was, by the way, Daniel.
So I was asking if you had any like rituals or exercises that you use to kind of mentally prepare. Like I'll give you an example. If I'm doing a presentation or something, but where I need to be on, I really don't want anybody to talk to me for like 10 minutes before. I'm trying to gather my thoughts, and if you come and distract me in that point with some meaning, what do you want a sandwich after or whatever? Like you're gonna piss me off. Like I need some quiet, focused time right there. So do you have anything like that? Or maybe you don't wash your socks for 3 days or whatever it might be. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything that's really superstitious. I don't have anything to do with socks or having the right this or the right that I can't do without. I'm generally not a very superstitious person. I do agree that having a little quiet time beforehand to get your mind right is important so that you're sort of focused and ready to perform or compete. Obviously, the easier it is, the more prepared you are for that, and the less of a reach it is for you mentally and physically, the less you've got to get in that focus point to do well. When I go out to these horse trials in Ocala, and I've been doing them for years, and it's not like at a high level for me. I can be chatting away with somebody right before I go out of the start box. But if I'm competing right at the highest part of my potential or the highest level I've competed, yeah, then you're really wanting to make sure you're zeroed in and focused and ready to go.
So let's talk about eventing for a minute. So I'll be honest, I know some about eventing, but like I don't know what the difference is between a 3-star, a 4-star, a 5-star. So what are we talking, height of jump, length of course, or level of the dressage, or like and is that the rider, the horse? Like what is kind of the breakdown of how that works?
Yeah, so there's 5 stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 star, and it refers to the degree of difficulty for all three phases, for the dressage, the show jumping, and the cross country. The most obvious way you see that is in the height of the jumps. As the stars go up, the jumps get higher. But you also see it in a lot of other ways. The technicality of the courses get more difficult. In the cross countryness, the narrowness or the angles of the jump get more difficult. In cross country, the terrain, like how you go up and down hills and how they use that, gets more challenging. In the dressage, the movements get harder. So, for example, at the 1-star level, you might have leg yielding. At the 2-star level, you might have some counter canter. At the 3-star level, they might be adding in shoulder in and haunches in. At the 4-star level, you might be adding in a steeper amount of counter canter and walk pirouettes and walk canter walk transitions. And then at the 5-star level, they'll add in flying changes as well as making all those other things more difficult as well. And then another actually big one to recognize that is what makes it really challenging is the degree of fitness. So the length of course gets more challenging, and it becomes the point where you're not just practicing the 3 skills, you're also having to make sure that at least once a week during the season you're devoting a day. Often people say every 5th day, but it varies on the person and their program. You're having to devote a day just to getting your horse fit enough where they can actually get through 10 minutes of galloping.
Yeah, that takes a lot of TV shows and movies would definitely make people think that horses can just run for 25 miles, and yeah, that's not true, is it?
There's a lot, and there's a huge amount of both art and skill and science to getting your horse that fit without making your horse resented and without getting your horse injured. Very fine line, because if you push it too hard, your horse is gonna emotionally hate you or they're physically gonna get injured. So you're trying to like find that thin line for each particular horse, how they get fit and how far out from the competition you need to start getting them fit.
So, what about another aspect of that? Like, I'll say some of the most pain in the neck horses that I have had to ride were the ones that were super fit and they just feel like King Kong and want to go beat their chest all the time. And that may not be like for the dressage, that may not be what I want you to be feeling like right now. So, do you find the mental challenge there too, that you got to handle this horse very differently than this other horse and so forth? And are you riding a variety of breeds? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Is it kind of a, I know this isn't a breed specific deal, so is it all of them are thoroughbreds, or could be any of 20 breeds that you got, or what?
Yeah, if you go and you look at the lower levels of eventing, sort of the amateurs and the people that are competing at a lower height, and you went to the AECs, which is the American Eventing Championships, and you looked at like a broad base, I bet you could find 20 breeds there. You're gonna have different kinds of ponies. You're gonna have, I wouldn't be surprised to see a draft horse here and there or something like that, or an Arabian or a quarter horse or a whatever, thoroughbred, warm blood, all kinds of different stuff. When you get to the highest levels of the sport, the 5-star level, it gets much more specific. And they're going to be virtually, not all, but virtually they're all going to be either thoroughbreds or thoroughbred warm blood crosses. Some version of that. And you might call that like an Irish sport horse or some kind of German horse like a Trakehner or something like that. But the bloodlines and the type gets much more similar at the highest levels. In terms of the fitness of a horse, that's an interesting question, and I think I think it makes me think of 2 things. The first is, how you said a thoroughbred at the beginning of our conversation today. You said a thoroughbred can think faster or think better when they're going
Hmm.
faster, as opposed to a quarter horse. So there's some truth to that, but I would also try to have a horse and people that are training the horse understand that if a horse can do something. If you can teach it to them at the walk or halt first, and they can really do it with an understanding and a relaxation, and then you add in the speed later, it's going to be even better than if you just teach them whatever the skill is at the trot and the canter and the gallop. They may do it, but you're going to lose a little bit of their ability of how much they really understood it and were able to think through it. Whereas if you start eventing and you teach them right from the time that they're started to do all the things slowly and smoothly and rhythmically, and then once they've got that really strong, relaxed, rhythmic foundation, then you go on to add the speed and adrenaline second. I would argue that's going to make a better horse in the end. The other thing that I see sometimes, and it makes me even think a little bit of human athletes. you think about somebody that is like the football star, you know, the quarterback or the wide receiver or whatever sport it is, and they have some kind of behavioral thing. Like they're not getting good marks in school, or they're a little rude, or they stay out late. But because of the football star, people tend to hold them to a different standard and they kind of get away with stuff. You know what I mean
Hmm.
by that?
Absolutely.
And I think it's sometimes the same with really talented horses. Like people have this mindset that, oh, to be a really top horse, they have to be quirky or they have to be difficult. And I think there may be some truth to that, but I also see people letting those horses get away with stuff that they wouldn't let other horses get away with, and not holding to the same standard of like groundwork and horsemanship and respect and trust and obedience and all these other things that we would like hold other horses accountable for.
Yep. I think one of the most talented horses that I've ever dealt with went that way because the head trainer liked her too much and he was too
Yeah.
lax on her and she never became what she should have become exactly because of that, my opinion anyway. But um anyway, so what about like injuries? So I'm when I'm thinking thoroughbreds, I'm kind of thinking a horse looking for a place to break down. And I don't know if y'all are riding a lot of off the track thoroughbreds or whatever, but you throw cross country courses, ups, downs, jumps, and all of that in there. So is that a balancing act that you have to go through too, or is it pretty well, the ones that we have trouble staying sound, they need, that's the square peg round hole thing, and we're not going to deal with that, or what?
Yeah, I mean exactly what you just said. A lot of horses in general, and thoroughbreds even more so, and thoroughbreds off the track even more so than that. Um, yeah, it's difficult to keep them sound, and it's very frustrating if you've spent a lot of time and money, energy, and love getting a horse ready for 5 or 10 years for something, and then the week before you're supposed to go to the Olympics, the horse is not sound. And people that have had that experience, they pay a lot of attention now to the bloodlines of a horse, and the vetting that they put a horse through before they buy the horse, and the vet care, the amount of money that we spend on vet care and staying ahead of problems and getting stuff x-rayed or ultrasounded or whatever. Even if you just think you might have a problem before you actually have a problem, you're already trying to stay ahead of it. I mean, it's just like any kind of like high performance endeavor. You're putting a lot of time and money and love into like making sure that everything is top notch, and it's not easy. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make, and you try to learn from each one, but then you think you've made every mistake that you can make, and then there's like another one you can make.
Yeah. Well, plus all of it, we seem to come up with like a new terrible disease every year that gets added to the list of things that are catastrophic. I think Geld scars is one of those that we're on now. I don't know if you've ever dealt with that. And then a couple of years ago, the kissing spine thing, genetic in thoroughbreds, and it's just a PSSM, and like there's a never ending tirade of, oh no, now that's on the radar too. So,
Yeah.
so going back to Tomcat, where does he fit into your world now? Are you looking at eventing with him, or is he the family kids horse, or you just dink around on him and do liberty stuff, or the new thing you want to play with, he's your guinea pig, or what?
The last one, the new things that I want to play with. So right now I'm teaching him some Liberty stuff, which is a sort of a discipline I want to get better at. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to learn a little bit more about the Western world, get more comfortable riding in a Western saddle, and whenever I've got an opportunity to participate with an instructor or a clinician that comes to town, whether it's in reining or cutting or ranch versatility or competitive trail or something like that, he's going to be the horse that I do it on. So he's going to be my horse to, all this other stuff with eventing, that's like my job, and for him, that's going to be my hobby. Give me a chance to do something new.
I love that. That really is. I didn't own a horse for a long time, or let me put, I didn't own a horse that wasn't there to be flipped or something. Like I didn't have my horse, you know what I mean? I have him now, but that might be one of those things a lot of people are surprised about with horse trainers. A lot of us don't really have like our horse, kind of a horse that we get to go play on and relax a little bit with and all that kind of stuff. So for Road to the Horse, I don't know if you're doing as much this year, but I know last year before it, you had gone and ridden with some guys that are well known for colt starting and kind of, would you tell us a little bit about, because I don't know if like I don't generally think of the English world as having a real strong colt starting aspect to it. In fact, I've started tons of English horses. I kind of view they tend to outsource most of that, and then they want them when they're a 7-year-old and all the goofy is gone. So did you have much of a background in that within the English world prior, or is this really a pretty new thing for you?
I've had a little bit of an interest in starting horses since the first horse I helped start was in Texas with Bruce Logan. Yeah, I think in maybe 2009. And before that, I'd never, I grew up around horses, but we lived kind of in the city and we never started horses, much less even had young horses, like all the horses were like more established by the time myself or my family or the lesson program was working with them. And since then, I've always had an interest in it. Like I watched Road to the Horse and I've kind of watched different clinicians and DVDs on it and start, but I don't really start a ton of horses by most people's standards that start horses. I'll start, 3 or 4, sometimes maybe 5 or 6 horses a year. Some years less than that. I mean, there's been some years where I don't think I've started any horses. And in terms as far as the English world and the Western world, I think English people do start horses. They're more likely to outsource it to like a cowboy or somebody whose specialty is starting horses. When you look at people that start horses in the English world, it's probably a little bit more similar to how they start horses on the track, which is not with as much emphasis on it as a specific like art or skill, or with the emphasis on reading the horse. It's more like a series of steps, sort of 1, 2, 3, 4. Like we're gonna keep the horse in the stall, and we're just gonna have the halter on him. We're gonna get him saddled in the stall, and then we're gonna put a rider on him in the stall, and then we're gonna lead him around. And the process takes a little longer and is a little less artful, but they still manage to get it done with a lot of horses. Whereas in the Western world, in the cold starting world that I've seen, I did attend a lot of clinics last year. I worked locally with a guy, Jake Birnbaum, who's amazing, and then I attended clinics with Glenn Stewart and Martin Black and some other people. I mean, there's probably too many people to name right now, but what I love about that is when they really start to think of it as not just something that they got to get done so they can get to the stuff later, and not just as a skill, but it becomes a discipline, or even more than that, becomes an art in itself, how good people can get at it. It's pretty amazing to watch good cold starters.
Hmm. Well, I gotta say, I gotta pay you another compliment here because I had no idea, and I mean this in all sincerity, but I would have thought you had started way more horses than that before going to Road to the Horse to do that. So that's, I mean, kudos to you for getting to that level. Obviously, you have horsemanship in other ways and all that kind of stuff, but that blows me away that you were able to get that good and that accomplished with it with that number of horses. I would think most of the people there have started north of 1,000 or something like that, or several, like Martin Black maybe has started 8,000 or something, um, so that's incredible. That really is.
I think there's two specific skills. You have to have some cold starting ability, and I spent, the 9 months leading up to it, I really doubled down on learning the specific skills, about how to get a saddle on a certain way and how to catch a horse a certain way and how to tip them off a certain way, and not to diminish how important those skills are, because they're very important. But I think a road to the horse format for a person really comes down to two things, which aren't to do with like those kinds of skills. I think what it comes down to is, one, is your ability to read a horse. Not what you do to the horse, but your ability to read the horse, which basically tells you when you can push and when you got to wait. And I think if you wait at the wrong time or too long, you're not going to get road to the horse done. And if you push too often, too much, or for too long, you're also not going to get it done, and it's going to look bad, right? So I think the biggest skill to have, if you can call it a skill, is your ability to read the horse, and that's something that I think you can see in all different disciplines. And then it's just sort of taking that thing and going and transferring it to colt
Mhm.
starting. And then I think the second thing, which I was very aware of going into it, um, is not is being able to go into it and not letting the pressure of the timeline and the judges and the prize money and the crowds and the television cameras, not letting the pressure get to you to where you start to ignore your ability to read a horse and you start to push too much.
Mhm.
And so I really had to go, and I didn't make myself do it. It came together in a, I don't know what the word is, like almost a magical way for me. It was a very unique experience in my life, how much I was gonna able to go into that competition with the combination of being very, very well prepared and not caring if at all if I won. Normally those two things go hand in hand. Like in pentathlon, I was very, very well prepared, but the reason I didn't shoot well is because I cared how I was going to do,
Yep.
right? Whereas with Road to the Horse, I went into it with the mindset of like, I'm going into the best job I can. And that's not something I think, at least for me, that I can just tell myself to do and I can do it. Like because I've tried that. I've tried going into competitions. I know it's more important to focus on the process and the outcome. And I've said to myself, don't like as if I'm telling myself, don't care how you're going to do, just focus on the process. But you still care. Like you can't force yourself not to care, kind of. But for Road to the Horse, for whatever reason, whatever series of events led up to it, I had that mindset where I was very, very well prepared, and I had some really good people help me. And I think I was able to. I think you can always do better. If I were to give myself a score out of 10 on how well I did, I'd probably, if I were to go by like a dressage scoring system, I'd probably give myself like a 6.5 out of 10, which is like not bad, but it leaves a lot of room for improvement. But I think for where I was at, the reason I was able to kind of perform to the highest level I was probably able to with the skill I had was because I was aware of those two things going into it.
What part of it? I've done some of the colt starting competitions, and I have to say, like the first one I was in, I had absolutely no concept how big of a part of it the clock was. Because when I'm in a round pen working a horse, I zone out. I'm there with the horse, and there's no concept of whether this takes 45 minutes or 2 hours, or that's not even in my top 100 things I'm thinking about. And so to go to something where here is this clock and it is a huge part of the competition, what kind of an adjustment was that for you, or how big of a monkey on your back was the clock?
Honestly, compared to what we think of as the horsemanship world, that played like right into my strengths. In my sort of English eventing world, everything is on a timeline. My day is broken up into 30, 45-minute hour segments. I got to finish this horse at this time, start this horse at the next time. The next lesson is shipping at this time. If I'm teaching a clinic, everything is on like an hour and 15-minute time schedules. I've got four people. I got to get them all feeling like they accomplish a certain amount of time, get something done between 9 and 10:15, start the next group at 10:15. Otherwise, my whole day gets behind schedule. The first time I went to what we think of as an actual horsemanship clinic and I saw people run with no timeline, like I was equal parts amazed and inspired and equal part uncomfortable and anxious about it. I was like, when I saw somebody for the first time just go, there's 100 people watching, we've got five people in the clinic, and we're gonna sit here and wait for this horse to lick and chew. And we don't know if this is gonna take a minute or 8 minutes or 28 minutes. And we're just all gonna wait. It's like the awkward pause. It's like we're just all gonna wait until this horse takes a breath and licks and chews before we go on to the next thing. The first time I saw that, I was probably 20, probably 29 years old. And I'd never seen somebody take that time for a horse before. And I will tell you, I'll never forget that moment. And and so now I'm very aware of trying to take the time it takes for a horse, but I'm also part of just the way that my life has operated has been on a schedule. And like compared to people that don't operate on a schedule, that definitely like played to my strengths for sure.
I like that. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the book that you have coming out? You're going to be releasing it at this year's Road to the Horse, and that is Starting in the Middle. So, what inspired you to put this together?
So my first question is that's a it's over 400 pages, that
Hmm.
book. Now I want the truth. How much did you read of this
I
book,
didn't get
Daniel?
very far into it. She just sent me the email with the PDF maybe 4 or 5 days ago. So, yeah, I didn't
Okay.
get very far.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have a online course going on right now, and that has been like my worlds. I was hoping I was going to get that a month ago or something, but
No. I just wanted to get a general idea so I know how much to kind of like steer this conversation. So,
I read probably 10%
uh,
of it, something like that. I do have a couple of questions, but yeah, I'll be honest with you.
so basically the writing the book, the start of writing the book and getting invited to Road to the Horse, those two things happened at the same time. And so for nine months from when I got invited to competing, I kept notes. I'm not normally a diary keeper in my sort of day-to-day life. I'm not the person that goes home and writes in their journal or diary about what horses I rode or what I did. But it's also something that when I've had projects, like I enjoy the writing process and I want to take notes so that I can do a good job of the writing. And so whenever I did a clinic, whenever I was competing, whenever I, throughout each day I rode to the horse, I was taking notes. And then at after Road to the Horse was over, then at that point I started trying to take all these notes and condense them into a book. And it is, or I've just finished it now. So it was a very time consuming and difficult process to do that. One of the biggest challenges, which I had the help of an editor at the end, was that it was way too long once I had kind of taken all these things that I experienced and all these thoughts I had, and I put into a book. At the end, it was probably almost close to 200,000 words, and we had to try to cut it almost in half to where it was closer to 100,000 words. And that's it's difficult, like cutting parts to know what to cut, and it's also a very time-consuming process. I will say I enjoyed it though. There were times where I didn't enjoy it, but overall, like I enjoy trying to reflect on stuff and think about how to break stuff down and what I learned from different things.
Well, I did. This was in the beginning where I was reading it, but I wrote this down. I thought this was a fantastic quote. One of my little habits is I keep all these folders in my phone notes of one of them is what I call arena writing. So I haven't built the place that I want yet, but I dream of having an arena that on like each panel around the arena has words of wisdom on it. So I can just envision this day I'm riding this horse and we stop to take a break and I'm having a little problem and I look up and there's the words of wisdom that apply to exactly what I'm doing right now, you know. And so this made my arena writings list. So the quote is the difference between playing with cards and playing with horses is that with cards, you will win or you will lose. With horses, you either both will win or you both will lose, no matter what you think. And I thought that was just fantastic. And it also kind of plays into that question I had for you of what makes a good horseman, and then you immediately said, "Well, are we talking about someone who's also a good person and is good with horses, or not?" I would say it's pretty reflected through your book that you are the latter, not the former. You know, you are concerned with how this gets done, not just that it gets done, and all of that stuff. And I loved that saying. So that's going to make my arena wall at some point.
Thank you very much. I love that. How how far out till we got the budget for the arena? How many years are we talking here?
Depends on how this podcast grows, man. Let me tell you, I don't know. Or if I get the road to the horse invite, we'll see. I had actually applied the very first year they did wild cards to it, and I wasn't particularly thrilled with the process. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way because some of the people that were wild cards already had TV shows and stuff like that, and I was kind of like, yeah, this wasn't set up the way I thought the way they said it was going to be set up. But so I haven't reapplied since, but maybe I should. Who knows?
I'll put in a good word for you.
Well, thank you. So, with the process of writing that book, kind of like you're talking about, I don't know what it's called, but the thing that was attached to the horse, and you discovered you went left more than right, even though you thought it was even. When I think that process of taking notes or videos or whatever is often very revealing, because your impression of what it is versus when you look back on the video, the notes. So what revealed itself to you that you weren't expecting when you started to go back and dig into that and make sense of it all?
So, like some of the surprising things along the way were a lot of things that other people pointed out. For example, when I was doing a Martin Black clinic, he pointed out that I virtually always do everything starting on the left of the horse, in the horse's left eye. And so now I'm trying to get in the habit of when I am taking a break or approaching a horse, or I go to first brush a horse or whatever it is doing, go to the right side, because no matter how much I try, I don't think I'm going to even it out. Like there's still always a tendency to just do more or start on the left. So I'm trying to do more on the right. Working with Jake Birnbaum down the road here in Ocala, he pointed out to me that a lot of times he called it my internal hum, but it's like this internal vibration or movement that we have, that mine was often too high for situations, and that I needed to slow that down. And it's the same thing now I've realized that happens in other parts of my life, like going on vacation, it takes me 2 days to like bring that down. If I come into the house at lunch hour, I come in and I'm like doing six things at once, and my wife is trying to do something on the computer or answer an email, and she's just like tick. She's like, "You're at a here, and you need to bring it down to a here," and so that's something I've become. I wasn't really aware of that so much about myself, and I've become much more aware of it now. Working with Tom Pearson, a reiner, no matter how good I get at reading horses, uh I'm always amazed that there's always a way to get better. Like there's nobody that is a 10 out of 10 at reading horses, in my opinion. And I was starting a horse with him, and I noticed the eye flick to me, and I step back, and and Tom goes to me, "You were late." And he had noted before the eye had come, the ear had changed, and he had noticed the ear, and I had been waiting for the eye. And it's just like there's just so many subtle differences that you can kind of notice. When I look back, sort of as I finished the book, one of the questions as I got to the very last chapter that I sort of asked myself was, why, for what reason? Like I did all these things to prepare. For what reason was I able to win in the end? And I think it was obviously a combination of things. I think it was the preparation I did, the skills, the reading the horse, being high involvement, low attachment, which means that I was really prepared, but I didn't care if I was going to win. I think it was being aware of my internal hum and being able, when I go into the round pen, allow my breathing to slow down and get more on the horse's wavelength rather than me being vibrating up here. But I think the biggest thing that I learned going through that experience, and that I even came out of it stronger with, was basically being more comfortable being myself, both with how I work with horses and in general, and not trying to start a horse the way that Martin Black does, or the way that Pat Pirelli does, or the way that Chris Cox does. I'm not trying to start the horse the way they are. I'm learning a ton from them, but I'm still coming back and going, I'm going to start the horse my way.
I like that. I think it's kind of like cooking. the more skill you have as a chef, the less held to a recipe you would feel like you just, oh, that's just a ratio of fat and acid. It doesn't have to be exactly this. You play around and color between the lines. Do you feel like going down this rabbit hole of cult starting and starting to maybe look at more of the micro um, expressions of the horse, the ear flick, the eye? Do you feel like that has translated and made you a better horseman in the eventing world and the rest of it?
Oh my God. Yeah. The amount you can learn from cold starting and from natural horsemanship, but even just cold starting in particular, the amount you can learn from that that applies to the competitive world is unbelievable. I mean, so much of it. And the reason it's not usually important with I'm going to say important in quotation marks. The reason that we kind of maybe don't think it's important is because with a more mature horse or a started horse, or what we might call, like, even in quotation marks again, a broke horse, is that there's a lot of stuff with those horses that we can get away with.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean we should, but we can get away with it because the horse is sort of used to people or desensitized, or they understand the program and they're forgiving enough and smart enough and far enough along that you can get away with a lot. But with a young horse like that, especially the horse that's never been handled or in a 3-day format, you just can't get away with making those mistakes. You can't get away with being rude or mean or abrupt or too quick or being in the wrong place at the wrong time or bursting through their bubble to where they back up. Like, you just can't get away with it. And if I take all those things that I can't get away with and now I apply them to older horses where I could get away with them, it makes that relationship that much stronger.
I completely agree. I am sometimes amazed when am around some more advanced high level pros at some of the stuff that they do, some of the things that are hard rules in my world that they just violate willy-nilly with no care whatsoever, and I'm just like, whoa, you blew through that like there wasn't a wall there, and there damn sure was a wall there. Like, whoa, what are you doing? um I love how you kind of talk about your vibration, because I've even seen, like, in the colt starting world, there's a difference between starting some gentle horses that were raised at this facility and what y'all are getting in the round pens, which kind of haven't really been touched by a human before. And the amount of sensitivity there, how big their flight bubble is, and all that stuff. That's a very significant change that most people might not understand. So had you really fooled with anything that snorty until your 9 months of preparation, or was that kind of another level you had to adapt to? Because the really scared 200-pound weanling and the 1,200-pound 3-year-old are, the consequences of getting that wrong are not the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's really no two ways about it. In the 9 months leading up to Road to the Horse, I learned more and expanded my knowledge of cold starting more in those 9 months than in the previous 9 years. Like, to do with the skill, to do with exactly what you're describing, like a horse's bubble, how snorty they are, horses that are harder to catch, horses that buck. Um, I just got a lot savvier about how to be in the right place at the right time for those kinds of horses. I still have never had, I don't know if you have, I've never gotten a Mustang off the range and taken a Mustang through the process, but at some point in my life, I'd like to do that. Have you done that?
Yeah, I kind of have a so, like, they have the Mustang makeover. That would be the sort of thing that's really tailor made for me. But I have some pretty strong disagreements with some of the stuff the BLM does, and the way they're marketing some of that stuff. And I don't really want to be a part of the, like, I do not think that the average person needs to own a Mustang or needs to go try to start one. Like, if someone like you or I has played with it for a couple years, now it's a horse. But the average person will get themselves in a wreck with a horse that's that snorty. So when you take the most talented people you can find and you show off what they can do, that in no way is a comparison of the reality of what Joe Smith's going to have happen in his world. So that's always kind of turned me off about that deal.
You think if you were to fix that, like if you were running the BLM, do you think it would be a matter of changing the rules for that competition, or a matter of educating the public more that this is something for experts, not for beginners?
Yeah, I think it's more the honesty of the education, because like we talked about breeding earlier, these Mustangs, they are feral horses, but they have missed out on generations of improved controlled breeding.
Yeah.
And so, is there a diamond in the rough out there? Yes. Are there some of those horses that are going to be 3 years of mental cases before they finally kind of settle down? Yes. And so, like, one of the dirty little secrets, the people that do compete in that a lot, they're going to often get two, three, four horses, so that one of them is going to be showable for the money. Because believe it or not, too, they actually have way more soundness problems in those horses than you think. So if they get three horses, one of them's crippled and is not that, it's not gentle. We can't take the x-rays we might want, whatever. So we've got a whole process here. We may be able to fix it, but I can't fix it in 90 days or 100 days or whatever the timeline is. And then one of them maybe has some mental instability. And once again, we're just halter broke. We're not doing flying changes yet. And so I can't take that one to town to show it either. And so anyway, I think as long as all of that would be up front and kind of explained, I don't want to see Mustangs disappear from the face of the earth. Or I'm not against Mustangs or anything like that, but I am against making people believe they're going to have a level of success when in reality they're probably about going to be killed in the process. That's just a very different dynamic going on. I don't think most people belong starting colts at all. That because you're always going to make a mess of that the first few times, and this is something that you could get hurt, the animal could get hurt, you could set it on a path that's going to kind of ruin its life and so forth. So I think we have that stewardship responsibility of entering into that with a certain frame of mind. And it's not like wood carving. This is not something you can just learn the hard way and it has no consequences other than a couple of band-aids or something like that. So that's my thoughts on it anyway. So with the book starting in the middle, what does that refer to? Is that your original title, or did the editor come up with that and gave you an angle on it, or how did that happen?
100% the editor came up with that. I had a couple of working titles, none of which I were in love with, which is why I was happy to change it. The working title I had as I went through it was just simply starting horses. But starting in the middle, I liked it because it referred, to me anyways, I felt like it referred to a few things. It felt like, Road to the Horse, we're often starting in the middle of round pen. We're also starting not really not the middle of the horse's life, but also not when the horse is born. The horse is 3 years old. Also, for me being about 42, which is about sort of midlife, statistically speaking, it's sort of like starting in the middle of my life, a new thing. Like the colt starting thing is something I've always been interested in. But really, like I said, the 9 months leading up to it, it was really like a very deep dive into trying to understand a lot about that world. I read a lot of books and saw a lot of videos and clinics and education and stuff like that. And the more I thought about the title, the more kind of different things I thought it applied to. So, and it also has a nice sort of reference to my first book, which is called In the Middle of the Horseman. So it kind of like has a little, and the covers are kind of similar. So I just kind of liked it. I thought it had a nice feeling to it.
That pretty much does mean you have to write a third one too, because this one is in the middle, right? And so you got to have.
Yeah, you gotta have a trim.
That's another question for. Are you an oldest child, middle child, baby of the family, or what?
Yes,
I'm going to say you're a middle child because you have this complex personality.
I'm a middle child. My older brother is 3 years older than me, and my younger brother is almost 6 years younger than me.
Yep. For those listening, National Middle Child Day was yesterday, and we're all fine that you forgot. It's okay. No big deal.
Are you a middle child?
I am, yeah.
You know what? You know what's so funny is I feel like so many I'm not somebody that's big into astrology or signs or anything like that, but I do feel like there's a disproportionate number of people that I get along with and I think that are cool that are middle children.
Y- Yeah, if you meet someone that's got a good sense of humor, they're either highly traumatized or a middle child. There's just no other way to get it, right? Or both. I guess that could be the third option. Well, I'm almost forgetting our sponsor for this episode. So let me get that real quick and we'll pay the bills. Tik had informed me that he's got a brand new shampoo sponsor, but I didn't get that quite in time for the episode. So we're going to go with the original one, Trudeau's Cuban Cigar Emporium and Manny Petty Studio. Justin Trudeau wishes everyone to know that he won't be unemployed for long. Years ago, the Trudeau family secured a sweet deal, tariff-free, with Papa Castro, and Justin's going to capitalize on the community property. We'd like to announce the grand opening of Trudeau's Cuban Cigar Emporium and Manny Petty Studio. What could possibly be better than enjoying a beautiful, rich Cuban cigar while having your cuticles taken care of and your feet massaged and exfoliated? Enjoy some musical theater playing on the big screens as you take in the warm tobacco flavors and maybe trade some crypto. Everything can't be free, but our Wi Fi is. Not only can you enjoy some self care in our Canadian Manny Petty studios, but you can pay your carbon taxes here as well or charge that new EV. That's right. Every Trudeau studio allows you to fulfill your destiny and pay for the damage you've inflicted or had inflicted on your behalf to our collective environment. We're also going to be installing a restaurant at each location in the coming year. Enjoy a nice soy or alternative protein meal while you rest and relax. The UN and WEF are clear on this. To save the earth, we all need to be eating more bugs. So let's embrace the proteins that are more sustainable. Get over the ick for the health of Gaia. Our beautiful Canada goose and loons enjoy these proteins as well as our sustainable fish. Isn't it about time that we all look to Mother Nature for our dietary needs in a sustainable and tax-heavy way to boot? Cigars, mani-pedis, and soy burgers or cricket burgers made with real crickets who ate soy. You can't go wrong at Trudeau's Cuban Cigar Emporium and Mani-Pedi Studio. Okay, we paid the bills now. Did you like that?
You're a genius. You're a very good writer.
I
I
came up
love
with the podcast just to have an excuse to write the mock sponsors. I really think that's
it.
the truth
You,
of it all.
that is like a hidden talent. That is really good. I'm impressed. You should collect those and make them into like a little booklet or something like that that you could sell or that people could download. I mean, that is amazing.
Maybe so. Thank you. Well, what you have Road to the Horse going on? You and I, this will probably air after this, but you and I are both going to be at Kansas Equifest. Just, I guess it's the weekend before Road to the Horse. So, what does the future look like for Tik? Are you now going to be doing more teaching, clinician kind of stuff, and at expos and events like this versus focusing just on the eventing, or what?
Well, there's two things that I'd really like to be able to start spending a little bit more time doing. The first is another book, and I got a few ideas for that. And I'd love to be able to set up my days where I don't know how to do it yet, but where I'm not always working on it at 4 o'clock in the morning, because for a morning person, that's a rough go to for your day. But I did enjoy the writing process, and I got a few ideas. And then the second thing is I don't know if you're familiar with the platform NF Plus, the
Hmm.
Noel Ward group, but I'm doing some more content with them. And I got started with them just doing sort of their traditional masterclass format, which is basically just teaching something to our audience that's right there. And then lately, we're trying to do some more stuff that is a little bit more almost like docu-series style. So the traditional stuff that they've done, it's something that, if I were to watch it, I would sit down in the morning, have a coffee, and be ready to take notes as I watch it. And we're trying to do stuff more now where like you could sit down in the evening with a glass of wine, maybe with somebody that isn't fully a horse person, and watch it and still kind of feel like it's as entertaining as it is educational. And I'm enjoying sort of the learning process of learning something new by learning how to be on camera and then sort of the travel that goes along with that. And meeting new people, just like with you doing this podcast. I flew out to California a couple months ago and we did a pilot for a new series out there, and I got to meet some cool people. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that, and I kind of hope the ball keeps rolling with that project as well.
I have always thought that the best and worst people in the world are in the horse business, and if you can figure out the difference, then you'll have a very cool path in this deal.
Cool.
Well, is there anything else? I know we're about out of time for you here. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you about or gotten to that you'd like to uh, throw back in to the conversation? Or
Well, I still feel like I missed my chance to pay you a compliment, and I'm going to throw a couple small ones out there. The first one is just this detail of this white shirt that you're wearing with all these colorful parrots on it, and I actually love this shirt both because I like the style and I like parrots, and I think it's kind of like got a nice sort of artsy flavor to it. And then the second compliment that accentuates the shirt is just that I love having a discussion with somebody that has like a nice, warm, inviting smile, and the smile just goes through your whole face and into your eyes. And I feel like you're interested in having this conversation with me. So thank you very much for that.
well, thank you. I'm looking forward to having a beer with you at Equifest over there, or whiskey or whatever. Actually, as I say that, I have no idea what the accommodations are, whether we're shuttled back and forth or what, but we'll try to make it work one way or the other, right? So,
Oh,
uh,
we will.
well, I certainly appreciate your time today, Tick. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better in the future and everything, and I will definitely be rooting for you at Road to the Horse. I'm sure you'll make it an interesting performance and do the best by the horse. And win or lose, you really don't care, and that's the absolute best way to go into the deal. So, do you have any of the other competitors that you're going to be there with that you know, or that you're particularly interested in getting to meet?
I know personally, I know Cristobal Scarpati from Argentina, and he's going to be one of the wild cards. So I'll kind of be cheering for him because I know I'm in the wild card event. And then in the main event, there's myself and Vicky Wilson, the show jumper from New Zealand, and I've spoken to her a few times. I've never met her in person, but I've watched her over the past. She's done it 3 times before, and I think she's a really interesting person and fun person to watch, and a really strong competitor. And then Phil Haugen. I haven't met him personally either, but I spoke with him on the phone a couple times. I called him to congratulate him on getting in, and he's very friendly and a very smart guy and a very talented person. So I'm looking forward to how he goes. I think this year is going to be one of the most interesting, diverse years ever. And the only kind of regret I have about competing myself is that I'm not going to be able to watch everybody else, because I always learn a lot from watching.
Hmm. Absolutely. I've made some good friends in those kind of competitions and all of that stuff too. So yeah, it's more fulfilling when the caliber of people that are there with you are very high, and the people you're competing with are the kind of people you'd want to watch, just exactly like that. So, well, congratulations and kudos to you. I'll be pulling for you, and certainly looking forward to more good things from you in the future with the NF Plus and all of that stuff. I'm sure the sky is the limit, and I will finish reading the book. I absolutely promise you. It's just been a time crunch thing for me, but looking for the third book to hit me up, and I'll write you an intro for that one or something. So,
Okay.
all right. Well,
Thanks very much for having me, and I'll see you soon.
yes, sir. Take care.
Bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dauphin.